Hi, I'm Joel H. Brewster, and I'm no stranger to horror. And this is a podcast where I discuss the big and the small of the genre with the hopes to take you from being a casual horror fan to a person like myself who's a spooky film fanatic. With me today, I have a very special guest to talk about one of my favorite horror zombie movies. The movie we'll be discussing is the film Little Monsters from 2019. And with me today, I have my favorite person in the world, my wife, Jennifer Brewster, who runs her own daycare. So she knows very much about little monsters of ourselves, including our own daughter, Ava, who's 2 years old. Jenny, how are you doing?
I am good. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing great. We're recording in the same house, just in completely different rooms. Because
No. Keep the illusion.
The illusion that we have a huge, we have a huge studio. So I'm in my studio.
I'm actually at our summer house.
And Jenny's in our summer house. So this is working out really great so far. So Jenny, I've seen the movie before. So this is my second time viewing it. How did you feel about your first time viewing it?
I have to say, I think you amped it up a lot. So I was kind of thinking that it maybe wouldn't be as good as you were saying it was.
Totally fair.
But I loved it. Oh. I really loved it. I thought it was amazing. It made me cry. It made me laugh. I loved it. I thought it was a fantastic movie.
I'm really happy to hear that, because usually my recommendations can, like you said, they can be amped up a lot because I get very excited and then they can just fall flat.
Yeah, more times than not. But this time I have to say you did well.
So I want you to tell me about your history with horror. And I have some questions because I've done some research into you as my wife, who I've been with for almost 10 years now, but I've still want to do some research to kind of, get more into who Jenny is. Oh. So from my understanding from a reliable source, that your first horror film that really spooked you was the film The Exorcist.
It was The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
Oh, okay.
Was the first one that spooked me. Mm-hmm. You know how bad my memory is for movies and which one came out first, so you can actually tell me which one came out first. It was that one and Echoes. I feel like Echoes may have been the one that actually came out first. And those are the two movies that stood out for me as being the most influential on me wanting to like horror. The one that maybe turned me off the most was my actual first experience with watching horror, which was the Poltergeist when I was 6 and my mom left for the very first time. She went to a funeral in Scotland and left us with our dad, who is just a big child, was just a big child. So he decided to get us McDonald's for dinner, take us to the grocery store and just let us go get ice cream, get candy, get chips, get chocolate, get pop, get whatever you want. But he got to choose the movie. So he chose Poltergeist, pushed the couch right up to the TV and forced 6-year-old me and 8-year-old my sister to watch Poltergeist. And I spent the whole film behind the couch begging him to turn it off. And he thought it was hysterical. So through that trauma, I think I got desensitized and actually ended up loving horror. And then I watched The Echoes, and then I watched The Exorcism of Emily Rose. And those were the two that just totally set me on the path of loving horror.
I appreciate your dad starting you young. In my research, I asked her sister. Your sister said it was The Exorcist, but I think she just messed up the title.
She did, yes, a Poltergeist. See, she's also traumatized. She's just like, I don't know. There was death. It was horror. I don't know. But it's a Poltergeist.
It was Poltergeist. With that said, was it specifically the scene with the worm in the tequila bottle that traumatized you?
Yes. Yeah, I thought that was the scariest thing I have ever seen. I mean, obviously there was so many things that led up to that moment, but that was the one that was awful. And then I grew up and realized that not all tequila has worms in it, and nor does it have like jumbo worms in it. I don't know. It was scary. It was scary through the lens of like the back of the couch. It was a very scary movie to watch at 6.
That's fair. On that same token, because as parents, I was going to say we're new parents, but now we've had Ava for 2 years. As parents, do you find that sometimes kids do very like spooky things in the middle of the night?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we've said this a lot, but I think children doing anything in the darkness that is somewhat abnormal to be doing in the darkness, just maybe it's because of how much horror we've watched, is just so scary. So scary. Like just sitting up in the bed is enough to spook me, which is like not necessarily actually a very scary thing, but in the darkness to just see a young child sit up and not talk and not move is enough for me to be like, they're possessed.
You know, it'd be really scary. And from my understanding, you used to do this, is sleepwalking.
Yes.
I heard that you were a notorious sleepwalker and you could be found in bathtubs, under beds, almost at the front door. Is this true?
Yeah, my mom woke up multiple times to little 5-year-old me standing at the foot of their bed in complete silence, completely still. And personally, I love my child obviously more than anything in the entire world, but I would contemplate giving me away. Like that to me is like that you have crossed the boundary of being an okay member in this family. I don't know how my mom did it. I think it's a testament to how much she loved me that she allowed me to stay in the house, even though I did that a lot. I left the house in my sleep. I woke up in the bathtub. Well, she woke me up in the bathtub a lot. Multiple times they found me under my bed. Just a lot of really creepy stuff. I would for sure not be okay with that. So I hope Ava doesn't get that because that's going to test me as a mother, that's for sure.
It's a really testament to a 90s house too, because our house would be like impossible for her to try to escape from, because it's got so many of like the modern locks and stuff like that I think it'd be like that if she got out, I'd be like, oh, she was kidnapped, because our house has so many modern locks that
and alarms and stuff, right? Like we didn't have any alarms. I think we just had we had a deadbolt lock and that was it for the time that I escaped. So thankfully, mother's instinct, she happened to hear the click of the door and I guess at that point she had so many years of me doing weird stuff that I guess in her head she was like, whoa, I better go check.
Like always hypervigilant.
Yeah, but then she found me all the way at the end of the path and she said, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to see my friends at school. And thank God she found me, because not that much further of a walk and I would have been straight on the highway. So thank God, but I don't know.
And this was in Calgary, right?
No, that one was in the Middle East that one happened. Yeah. And we had just moved there as well. So that really scared my mom, because she was like, oh my God, if I had woken up, I was only 8. I don't know if anywhere in the world I would have known how to get back home. But at that point, I think we'd only been living there about a month. So she was like, oh my God, how scary would that be? Because if I'd woken up, I wouldn't have even known our phone number. I didn't know our phone number at that point. So obviously that would have been a whole lot scarier than had it being in a place where I'd lived for long enough. Then I would have known neighbors. I would have known our phone number. So that kind of spooked her a lot, to the point of when we moved to Switzerland on my first week that we were there, our door had a key lock, like our bedroom doors had key locks. And my mom locked me in to my room at night just to be sure that I didn't escape. And I was 11 at that point, but she still locked me in. And I don't blame her. I think I found a lot of relief in that actually at the beginning to be locked into that. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So creepy children. Yeah.
What made you, because I know you. So I know that since I've met you and since I've known you, you've always just had a great way with being around kids. What really put you on to you knew you wanted to be a person that worked with kids?
I can't really pinpoint a moment. I just know I always was gravitated towards playing with children at parties and at family events and with cousins and stuff. I think there's just a level of playfulness and innocence that children possess that we lose when we're older, and they just make them a lot more enjoyable to be around and a lot more fun to be around than adults, because adults can be kind of lame and standoffish and not very fun. But for as long as I can remember, my mom always loves to tell the story of when we used to go to playgrounds when I was about 4 or 5. And I'd always go to the sandbox and try to pick up the 1 and 2-year-olds. Any child that was smaller than me, I was just always interested in kind of being the person of fun for them and then like getting the reciprocation of fun from them. Then I started babysitting at 11 and then working at summer camps, working at schools, working at centers. And it's just kind of been what I've always done and what I've always loved. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because when I watched this movie the first time, because I watched it by myself the first time. I don't remember why, but anyways, I watched this movie because we usually watch most of our movies together. But I watched this movie the first time, and the character that Lupita plays, Miss Caroline, reminded me so much of you. Of the characters that remind me of you in like, let's go through all my history of film. It's this character and Miss Honey, which I always tell you, Miss Honey from Matilda.
That makes me feel like you see a very positive side of me.
I do. Well, I do. Like even prior to us having kids, I always just felt like you had this sort of energy. And I thought that Lupita's character, that's why I really wanted to do this movie for the 10th episode too, or the big special 10th episode.
Woo woo.
I wanted to do this movie with you because it was really a character that I thought just had your same sort of reaction to. I think you'd have the same sort of reaction in the situation with dealing with zombies and having to get the kids to safety.
I totally felt like a very close relationship to her too, and saw a lot of myself in her. Not necessarily 100% of the way that she dealt with the kids, but a lot of the way that she dealt with the adults. How she kind of had like a split personality is kind of the way I view myself, where it's like, and you know this, the kids get 100% of good, happy, positive, fun me. And then by the time I interact with an adult, I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm spent. I have no patience for you. I have like zero patience for any of your bullshit. Because I keep that 100% for the children who I think deserve it so much more than adults do, which I don't think is 100% fair, but it's just the way it is. So I kind of felt the same way with her when she was with, what's his name? What is it? Mr. Kittywinkle? Is that what his name is?
Oh, yeah. Teddy McGiggle.
Yeah, Teddy McGiggle. So I totally understood with her where she's like, okay, kids, ha ha ha. And then would turn around and had like that broken toy from the gift shop in his rib cage. It was like threatening him. But then just like kept turning around with a smile to the kids, being like, we're just playing a game and he just needs a little cuddle to make him feel better. It was like totally exactly how I feel like I interact with children versus adults. It's like, kids get the best part and then adults kind of get my shortness.
I feel like Ava and our nephew Ollie, who's also part of daycare, I feel like they're going to have a very different childhood memory than I'm going to of their childhood.
Absolutely.
Mom was so sweet. Oh yeah.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. All the time. For sure. That made me laugh a lot. And even just the way, like, because with kids, and you can see that so much in the movie, is that like kids pick up so much more on like your tone, your body language, your facial expressions than they do on what's actually being said and what's actually going on in their surroundings. And like, that's what made that movie so powerful, was like realizing that like kids are going to go through trauma and kids are going to go through big life events. And I think so much of their memory of that moment depends on the adults in the situation and how they decide to handle it and how they decide to portray their emotions to the children. Right. And like, that was what's so interesting with the parents, how they were like, oh my God, our kids so traumatized, like they must be so overwhelmed with the situation. And the military were like, actually no, because the adults decided to reframe the memory in such the event, which would then turn into a memory, into such a positive thing. So I think, and you and I both do that too, like how much you and I fake argue and like laugh and we joke and we make fun of each other, and Ava gets so involved in it because she thinks it's funny and it's loud and we're joking and we're smiling, even if you and I are like actually taking little digs at each other. So I think like that's why I love this movie, was it was such a great representation of that, of you can portray through your body language that everything's okay. Kids will believe it's okay. And I think that's cool.
Yeah. What I kind of had down as note here is kind of like a summarized version of that, is that I feel like the kids in this movie, they would pick up their sponges in some areas and then just everything else go over their head, right? Like every time someone said a bad word, they were like, bad word, and sing that Kenny Giggle song. But like zombies were around them and they was like, oh yeah, this is a game. Like they wouldn't catch like the rotting flesh, or like even the smell would have been terrible. That's
absolutely. Absolutely. Even like when the teacher came in and she was covered in blood and guts.
Yeah.
And she decided to be like, I got in a jam fight, but don't eat it. Right. And like the kids were like, right. Because I think like, and that's what I was talking about before about like how innocent and like naive children are, makes that something that's a possibility, right? It opens up the possibility for parents to take any situation and just reframe it in the way that they choose to. And that goes both ways, right? Like you and I have talked about parents who take minor life experiences and explode them into something a lot more dramatic and a lot more emotionally taxing. And children pick up on that just as much, right? So you really have to decide and pick and choose and be very aware of how you're deciding to frame a situation to a child, because that they're looking 100% to you as the beacon of how am I supposed to feel in this situation.
So in this situation, was there anything that Lupita did that you're just like, oh, I would have done that differently, or for the most part where you're like, oh, you know what? Yeah, that's how I would have handled that. Because there was a lot of it was like slapstick, sort of impossible.
Yeah.
But like, do you feel like there was a lot of it that you're like, oh, I would have handled it like that? Because I feel like Lupita, I'm sorry to interject my answer here, but I felt like Lupita as a character was such a perfect horror character. Like she didn't do anything stupid where I'm like, oh, you idiot. She actually just like nailed it. But I think that had to go against the guy who was doing stuff dumb the whole time. So
I think so. I think not so much Lupita's character. It's a movie, and I'm really well aware of that. I think the flaw of the entire situation was kind of like the idea that all children would play along with her games, and that all children were coming from the same place. Like I said, like when you have an entire group of children and you have children that are all raised by different parents who've gone through all different types of life experiences, and you have, I don't know how many there were, like 15 kids in this,
something like that.
Yeah. Like you have 15 different reactions. And you and I talk about this all the time, like even just between Ava, our daughter, and Ollie, our nephew, their reactions to different situations are so extremely different. Even though overall their life experiences have been quite similar, they both come here every day. They're both in the same daycare. Like me and my sister are quite similar in our parenting styles, but biologically they both have such different personalities that their reactions to situations are so different. And I think that they somewhat touched on that in the movie, but for example, like I keep going back to the scene where she's trying to get them to get all into the gift shop from the tractor, and she's singing the old McDonald's song. Was that what she was singing at that point? I can't remember what song. Anyway, she was singing a song and she's playing her ukulele and she's got them all holding on to each other's shoulders. And I think in a situation like that, you would have like 3 kids crying, because even though it was a game, the zombies are horrifying.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's reasons why even in movies, like, and we saw this with Ava. I mean, Ava's a lot younger, but when we watched Moana, she was like, not this today, at like a darker scene. Yeah. Right. And like that, and it was a movie, it was on a screen. She was fully protected. So I think like in a situation like that, I didn't find that a flaw of Lupita's character. I found it more a flaw of like lumping all the kids together to kind of having the same personalities-ish. I mean, you did have that one kid with the putt-putt golf.
Max. He's Max. I was just going to highlight him. He was the one
so
bad
funny.
Kid. I loved him. I thought he was so funny. I think that like, I guess I'm a trash person. I thought that him bullying, Felix, I think it's the other kid's name, was so fun. I thought the bullying in this movie was just so, it felt like a 90s movie, like the jokes they were making and the things they could say to kids. I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, Jesus, you can't like say the R word like that. Like, yeah, but Max.
It was so funny.
to your point, I thought that Max was like the one bad kid, realistically.
Yeah. And he still like followed all the rules and like, you know what I mean? So I feel like that was kind of where it was a little bit.
He had one meltdown. He's a dream kid.
Exactly.
Like he had one meltdown at like the next day when they hadn't eaten. Like, he's a dream kid because he went to go putt golf.
And that brings up like a really good point about like the not eating, right? Like kids experience hangriness and think about where they slept, right? Like they slept on the floor in a souvenir shop and they were like away from their home and they're only 5. Like they are young children.
One kid was scared too. It was Beth, the little girl that had a crush on Felix. I have the names in front of me. I'm not like photographically remembering this or anything like that.
I was really impressed. I was like, oh God, I don't remember anybody's names at all.
No, Beth was the one that had a crush on Felix. And she was like the one, I feel like you had to like rope the kids, like for sake of story, you had to rope the kids into like certain personalities. So like the one bad kid represented like 5 bad kids, realistically. The one empathetic little girl represented like all of the little girls in the class pretty much. And then Felix represented the little weird kid that I loved so much because he's the cutest kid of all time.
He was so cute. But I think like speaking on Beth, right? Like they kind of highlighted that she was too afraid to go to sleep because her mom sings her a poem. So in a situation like that, like let's say that Beth is the empathetic, sensitive kid in that situation. She would have been freaking out over the zombies, right? Like to be like, oh, she was fine with zombies. She was fine, like, because their faces were torn off and like their entire mouths were exposed and you could like see their jaw bones and like limbs were missing. They were eating sheep.
The smell, you know? the smell would be so bad, like everywhere.
So I feel like somebody like little Beth would be overwhelmed through the whole experience. Like it wouldn't just be like, oh, now she's having a hard time to sleep. So I think that's kind of where it was a little bit more flawed, but you had to flaw it in some way in order to make the storyline go the way in which they wanted it to go. So
I have a question. Which one do you think Ava is more like, Max, Beth, or Felix?
100% Max.
100% a mix of Max and Felix with 0 Beth. Our daughter is like,
yes,
we love her. We love her. You know, she's not going to listen to this podcast. Maybe she will when she's older. But she has all of that aggression of that Max kid, and then all of the weirdness of that Felix kid, who went so in character of dressing up as Darth Vader that he was convinced he was safe.
That was so cute. That was probably one of my favorite scenes.
Loved
that. And then how the gate closed and he like really believed that he was the one who made the gate close. I thought I loved that scene. I thought that was such a
it's like a chef's kiss moment. That was so
absolutely
perfect. The gate close. Yeah, I agree with you. The gate closing was so good, like with his like force. I thought that part was just like so adorable. And I really loved
such a good callback and such a good like that to me was also such a good representation of kind of like the double-edged sword of how you react in a situation, right? Like, so if Miss Caroline had made the whole situation very serious and was like, listen, we are in a state of danger. These things can kill you. Felix would have never left.
Right.
But the fact that she framed it in like, it's just a game, you're fine, made him feel like he was invincible and he could play his part in the game.
Yeah.
So I think like that's a really interesting way to view the whole thing as well, as like how you decide to protect a child's emotional well-being may impact their physical well-being because they aren't actually fully aware of the gravity of situations. Right?
Yes. And I felt like, just to inside baseball this, because I feel like a lot of our families can probably listen to this podcast because we're both on it as opposed to just me talking. I feel like that Felix, him trying to save his uncle there, reminded me so much of my nephew Ollie, who I think is the sweetest kid on the planet, would go to that length and know that much about tractors.
Yes.
To be able to save me. It was like so much about like our nephew that like, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that can relate with a kid that's like, that's
a little boy
that's just that adorable, that rule bound, and just wants to help and is just so committed. I thought that he reminded me so much of Ollie that I could probably cry because
absolutely.
Kid, great casting for that kid. I thought he was phenomenal. Speaking of dressing up and committing to roles, from my understanding, you used to do performances with your sister and hand out tickets to have people attend those, your parents to attend those performances. So imagination is a big part of your childhood, right?
What a twist. What? I was not prepared for this transition. um yeah. Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Me and my sister, we lived in a compound in the Middle East. There were 4 houses. Our next door neighbor, Lucy, she was the same age as my sister. My sister and I are only a year and a half apart, so we were super close growing up. Also hate each other a lot growing up, but overall super close. So there was my sister and Lucy were the same age. I was a year and a half younger. And then the 3rd house had a little girl called Holly. She was about 2 years younger than me. So usually Kaylee, Lucy, and I, because we were a bit older, but then sometimes Holly would join us. We would learn dances. And by learn, this is pre-YouTube, this is pre-anything. Learn from each other and develop choreographed dances to Spice Girls, Backstreet Boys, Hanson. What was the other one? Bewitched, was that what they were called? Bewitched. Oh my god! Is it Bewitched? Charmed? Oh my god, I can't even remember. I'm gonna have to look them up now because now they're in my head.
Well, when you find them, I will put them in the show notes. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, all sorts of bands. NSYNC. Anyways, we would come up with all these dances, and then we would make our own pamphlets, like little what are they called when you have like the whole show order of what songs were going to come next. And then
oh my god, you went that hard.
Oh, we went so hard. We would like decorate the front of them, and of course this was like pre-photocopy, so every single person in our family would get their own individual show routine. And we would get dressed up. We would set up the whole rooms. We had it all down to a T. We even had intermissions. We would make drinks. We went all out. And when I mean we did this, like this was every week to 2 weeks. Like we went out. This is how we spent our time, right? Like, you know, shows were on TV for a certain amount of time, and then they weren't on TV anymore. So we had to find ways to pass the time. So this is how we passed our time. And then we would dance, and our parents were such good supportive people that they really made us feel like we could do this professionally if we wanted to.
Who said you couldn't? I think you may have been able to.
I mean, I think I gave up on a dream too early, and you're just kind of rekindling that flame, if you ask me.
What I'm saying is, if you and your sister put the dedication that you've both put into your own careers right now into these choreographed dances, who knows where you'd be right now? I don't know.
Who knows?
I don't know.
I don't think very far, to be 100% honest. And that's not berating myself. It is berating myself. We weren't good dancers, you know. None of us really had rhythm.
Neither does Britney Spears. No offense, Britney Spears, if you're listening to this. Neither does Britney Spears.
But Britney Spears was a very lucky individual in the sense of she came right at about the right time. Like if Britney Spears was trying to get famous right now, she would never make it. Like she was kind of in this like time warp moment where it was like, oh, we'll just take anyone as long as you're, you know, completely fabricated by your production team. And we just kind of don't stand for that anymore. People have standards.
What you're saying is that Britney Spears was lucky. She was a star. cries in her lonely heart. Is what you're saying?
I'm just saying she knew it. She knew it. She's as aware as we are.
Yeah. Question now, because you mentioned a band through there that really does connect with this movie. Hanson. Lupita's character followed Hanson. Would you have been the same way? Would that have been something that would have happened to you? Would you have went to Australia, maybe broken your arm, following Hanson, then been stuck there teaching this? You could have been Lupita's character.
I mean, I definitely could have been. The way in which Lupita and I differ is that I was never a Taylor girl. I was definitely a Zach girl. My sister, because she was older and more mature than me, was definitely a Taylor girl, but I was a Zach girl because he was younger, the drummer, I hope his name is Zach and I'm not completely embarrassing myself, but
what's the other? There's three of them, right? From Hanson. I'm hoping that there's some people that grew up in the 90s that know who Hanson is. I will put it into the show notes. Bop is going into the show notes, whether you like it or not. So
I think it has to at this point. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe you even need to like have it in the theme music. Something like that. But now it's really starting to bother me because I'm trying to remember Isaac. Isaac was the oldest one. Poor Isaac. I want to know if people are listening to this, can you please comment if you were an Isaac girl? Because I feel like there are zeros. And I'd be really happy to know that.
Were you an Isaac girl? Is that the one you liked?
No. Isaac was the old one.
Oh, right. Okay.
Probably like 2 years older, but when you're younger, you're ancient, you're so old.
Isaac
you
was
can
17.
drive a car. Yeah.
Isaac was a 17-year-old child.
Oh, absolutely. But he looked so ancient when we were
but that's always the case, though. Like, what happens to we're going off the rails here. We're don't worry, everyone listening. We'll make it back. I got some things here, though. That's like the Jonas Brothers, right? Like the oldest Jonas brother. I don't remember which one that was now. Did he do well? I don't know much about this. I'm talking to my ass now.
I was Jonas Brothers were way far past.
Yeah, Jonas Brothers were the newer version of Hanson.
Yeah, and I just don't think I followed them enough.
Except
for Nick Jonas.
Yeah.
Well, because I think for so many different reasons, he was the main guy. Oh, well, I guess you're right. Oh, yeah, because he's the one that's with what's her face, right?
Who?
What's her name? Joel.
Put this
the girl
in the show
from
notes.
Game of Thrones. Girl from Game of Thrones.
Khaleesi.
No.
Brianna Tarth.
No. The older sister.
Yes. I wish I'll put her name in the show notes because I can't remember right now, but Sansa. I was messing around.
Sansa. That's right.
Gwendolyn Christie is Brianna Tarth, and I think is maybe my favorite person that's in that show. That's off topic, but I really like Gwendolyn Christie. So
yeah. I know you do.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say. I know you do.
Gwendolyn Christie, she's amazing. I would follow her career anywhere it goes. I may do the movie In Fabric and have you back on the show for that episode. But
is that your way of making me watch it?
It's a phenomenal movie. Anyone listening, 2008 In Fabric is also a phenomenal movie, and I could not recommend that movie more. It's a weird horror comedy. I will definitely do an episode on that sooner or later because I love that movie. And you will watch it with me one time.
I know. And you know what? I have to say that at this exact moment in time, and you're going to feel so elated by this comment, but at this exact moment in time, I wish I had watched it so that I would have a lot more to say about it. But I haven't watched it. So.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that.
That's okay. You will have me back and we'll watch it. I just can't commit. Isn't it like 3 hours?
It's not. It's an hour and a half tops, but it's okay. We'll get to that later.
Okay. Now I have
I have a two-part question because this is I think my overall actually let's start with this part question. Who's your favorite character overall in the movie? We're counting kids, we're counting everyone. Who's your favorite character?
Okay. Now I've forgotten his name again.
Just say which characters and I'll tell you his name.
The kid
Teddy McGiggle.
Teddy the Giggle.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, I can't even describe who he is. I'm having such a hard time.
Josh Gad's character.
Yeah, Teddy McGiggle has got to be the best character in the entire movie by far.
Josh Gad's best role, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think that he should play that scumbag all the time because I thought the flip of him that's another person that did a good flip, I think, because you said Lupita did the same thing. I thought his flip of how he interacted with kids to how he was in real life was so good. The fact that we don't give more Oscars for comedy, I don't care what anyone says. I think we need to give more Oscars for comedy because Josh Gad's role in this was so underrated and so goddamn funny. Everything about it and from start to finish too.
Absolutely. And I think what made his character so hilarious and so entertaining to watch as well was I think deep down, everybody knows / firmly believes that every child TV star is like that.
That's my second part of this question. If you were stuck in this zombie situation, let's just say you're Miss Caroline in this zombie situation. Who is your Teddy McGiggle character? Who's your child entertainer? You can go past to present. Who's your child entertainer that you think would be the most like this if you were put in this situation? Who do you think would be most like this?
Captain Feathersword from the Wiggles.
So specific.
Well, I had it right on the tip of my tongue because before you asked the question, I was like, who he reminds me of is Captain Feathersword from the Wiggles. Captain Feathersword, I think
what
that's
a niche episode.
thing.
Go on.
I think that's an unfair thing to say because I think Captain Feathersword is actually a whole lot more playful and fun.
I think he's probably a nice guy.
But I think it comes across as like he probably does coke. He probably definitely gets prostitutes everywhere they go. I just think he's such a partier. He's the type of guy that is showing up to set so hungover.
Yeah.
And he's just doing a rail of coke to just get through the episode.
Just
that's just sorry, Captain Feathersword, but I also don't think he'd be offended. I think he'd be like, I don't know, she gets it.
Yeah.
So I don't feel bad about doing that. I think he's a partier and he likes to party. And there's nothing shameful about that.
No, we're not shaming you at all. Because I think
not shaming you.
I think he'd be, I really, if anyone's a parent that's listening to this, because I know a handful of people will be, Captain Feathersword, or maybe I don't know, maybe 100,000 people listen to this are parents. With the, or know of this, or maybe if you're not parents, you still just know of this character.
Yeah.
Either way, I'll put him in the show notes. But Captain Feathersword is one of the funniest parts of the show, The Wiggles.
Absolutely.
And the Wiggles are just, that's okay. Who's your favorite Wiggle now? We're gonna get into this. Why not? Who's your favorite Wiggle?
Well, I think that's a very difficult question to answer because I think you need to tell me situationally. Who's my favorite overall Wiggle on behalf of who do I think is the best person out of the Wiggles?
No,
definitely
performer.
Emma.
What is it? Person?
Oh, performer.
That's
what I mean by situational. I think Emma is the best thing that happened to the Wiggles, but she's not my favorite Wiggle. She's Ava's favorite Wiggle. I think she's an amazing dancer. I think she's super cool. How she's finally the only woman that's on the Wiggle.
Shout out to Emma. She's the most popular Wiggle by a landslide. Too.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not close.
Absolutely. But I think performer, definitely Lockie. Lockie goes hard in the paint. And I just think I just look forward to every time he's going to be the one that's singing. And it'll be the other ones are no, no, no. And then Lockie will come. He's hey! And just completely gives it. And he's the best singer. I don't know. Overall, he's my favorite.
Let's just go on the record for a couple of things here. Number one, hearing you just sing there, you never should have quit. I think you just conclude that. You should have quit.
Thank you so much.
Number two, I feel like a lot of people listening to this, this is what you have to look forward to. If you don't have kids yet, this is what you have to look forward to is very introspective looks at the Wiggles, a child entertainer group that if they came to Victoria, I would definitely we'd have to go.
Oh, we'd absolutely have to go. Yeah, absolutely. I don't care how much it costs.
But back to
okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Back to your original point, Captain Feathersword. Okay, that's modern. Who would you say old school? Because I know you watch child, and this is for the 90s kids. Who'd you say old school?
A favorite childhood performer, old school? Is that what you're trying to ask?
No. The childhood performer that you think would be the most like Teddy McGiggle.
Okay. Well, I think this has to do a lot more with alcohol use than actual split personality. But I've heard Mr. Raffi is quite the party animal, and is quite the angry drunk, which I think is a very interesting. Look at that, because Raffi is the sweetest kind of soft-spoken, acoustic guitar singing childhood performer. So to hear that he's an angry drunk I think that switch for me, because I only found out that Raffi was an angry drunk like 5 or 6 years ago. So I spent my entire childhood, teen years, early adulthood thinking he was kind of like this forest loving BC hippie who just plays his guitar and is so sweet and kind and whatever. So to find out that stage was to me like the same as watching the character in the movie go from being so sweet to being crazy.
Here's what I will say about Raffi, and we live in the same house. We spend all the time in the world together. So I've also heard the same things. Here's what I will say about Raffi, and here's what I'll say about Raffi in this situation. I think he'd be angry maybe at the adults, never at the kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think he'd have survival skills. And that's why I think Raffi would be my choice to be in this movie. It's like, I feel like he'd get me out of the situation. Like, I feel like Raffi is like, I feel like other childhood entertainers may not get me out of the situation, but Raffi is such like a socialist and such like a man of the people that I'm like, yeah, he might get drunk and angry, but I think he'd try to get us out of the situation.
Yes, but also we watched that character drink alcohol and like
I don't think he's
waste it. But who knows, right? We don't know in a situation like that. Like that's a very stressful situation. Like, is that how Raffi would cope with his kind of like fear and anxiety about the whole situation? Like, would he be the guy who was drinking hand sanitizer straight from the bottle? We don't know.
He might do that and then just like mow down 1,000 zombies because he's such a goddamn hero.
He is a hero.
Raffi's such a hero. He would actually, maybe he'd drunk and then just mow down 1,000 zombies, save Lupita, save that other guy while busting out the best songs on the guitar. Doing modern version. True. What's the Baby Beluga? Do a modern version of Baby Beluga. That one made me cry. Yeah,
that was beautiful.
He'd kill it.
That was so beautiful. Shout out if you know Baby Beluga. And I'm gonna cry just talking about it. And you want to cry. Raffi, we went to go and see him before Ava was born. I went with my nephew and my sister and my mom, and we went to go see Raffi, and he sung like an adult version of Baby Beluga, and it was called like Millennial Beluga or something. Oh, it's so beautiful. It's like for all the people who between like 1986 to 1996 who grew up with him, and I'm like bawling thinking about it. It's like all of us are now parents, so we're the ones who are bringing our kids to see Raffi. So he like wrote a song for us about like social change and climate change and how we're kind of the people who are standing up and trying to make a difference in the world, and how he like supports that and hopes we like continue to do that. Anyway, check it out on YouTube if you want to have a good cry. Yes, please do, because it's
you can't convince me a man that wrote that song would save the kids by like who knows what. He used the alcohol for Molotov cocktails
absolutely.
There. Raffi's a hero. I think of all the childhood entertainers, short of Mr. Rogers, who I believe fought in the war, because I think Mr. Rogers would have been out of there. He would have just been like he would have taken his shoes off, put on some combat boots, and actually just been out of there. But he would have felt bad about killing the zombies. That's the thing with Mr. Rogers.
Oh yeah, he wouldn't have killed them. He wouldn't have killed them.
He wouldn't have. Those are still his neighbors, and he's.
I think he would have tried to talk them down and somehow made it work. You know, like I kind of feel like he'd be able to like reach some chord in them and talk to the human that was still left inside them.
They were still clapping and listening to music. So I think Mr. Rogers would have been like a familiar face to them and saved the day.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. He's the type of person that if somebody told me something negative about him, like apparently he was, this isn't negative. No, it's not. It's not negative. Apparently he was like a very challenging parent to have, because he was so earnest and so good that apparently it kind of made it so that his kids wanted to rebel a lot more, because they were kind of like, it's like being around a saint at all times. He like everything was reframed in such a positive way, and he was always trying to like open the floor for dialogue. You know, like I think that would be really hard when you're 13, 14 to 16 to try to deal with your dad, and every time you're angry he's like, oh, take a deep breath and let's think about it from the other person's perspective, when sometimes you just want your dad to be like, punch him in the face, you know, kind of like meet you at your level. I feel like would be hard.
For the record, neither of our dads would have said that, but go on.
No, God, no, not at all. But I think my dad would not would have. He did. Yeah. He did validate my anger.
Yeah.
a lot more. Like it was never like see it from the other person's perspective. He would eventually get me there.
Mhm.
But in the heat of the moment, he'd be like, wow, that woman is a bitch. Like, I can't believe she did that. That's so messed up. Like, that's blah, 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 blah. And then as I started to come down, he would then guide me to like, well, maybe from her perspective and help me see it like that. But I think if he tried to meet me at the place of seeing it from that person's perspective originally, that would annoy me. Like,
Yeah.
let me just be angry for like 10 minutes because I can see it from her perspective already, but I'm annoyed, you know? So
I feel like Mr. Rogers would be a great person for a friend's dad for me.
yes.
Like, I think my personality is not a good match. I think that he'd be a great friend's dad. I'd be like, oh shit, I'm gonna go over to, I don't know Fred Rogers' kids' names. I'm gonna go over to whatever.
I think it would be Connor's dad. If you were gonna link one of our friends.
We're going a little too niche. Our friend Connor.
Our friend Connor, he seems like his dad would be. He seems like he'd be related to
I've met
the Rogers.
Connor,
I just have to say,
for the record, because I know my friend Connor's gonna listen to this. I've met Connor's dad before. Very, very much one of the nicest men I've ever met. It's not shocking that his children are all perfect little angels, but like not just like perfect little angels, like they're
compassionate.
They're very compassionate, but they're just very interesting people. I feel like everyone growing up, you throughout your life, you'll meet a person like my friend Connor, who's an incredibly hardworking, very earnest person. Who I recently got to see him with his daughter for the first time because of COVID, right? So we recently got to meet his kid for the first time, and to see him around his kid was absolutely beautiful. And I feel like you all grow up and you meet a person, like you get a friend that's like a Connor. And all I can say is if you do meet a person that's just very earnest, very hardworking, that always wants the best for you, if you have that person as your friend, hold on to them and just, that's my advice. That's my advice on that topic.
I think if you're listening to this and we say, think of a friend who you wouldn't be shocked was raised by Mr. Rogers. That should be your person you never let go, ever, because that is a gem. Just in the way Mr. Rogers is a gem, just in the way we're talking about him as if he was a flawless saint, because he was a flawless saint. I think knowing a person like him is that's a very rare and very incredible thing to have.
To take it back to the movie here, I feel that it feels like Lupita's character, Miss Caroline, kind of seemed like she was raised by Mr. Rogers. Like she had that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes and no, because I think going back to it, like to see how she responded to the adults, like even how she had to lie about still being engaged because
Rogers
were so creepy and stuff like that. I think, interestingly enough, if you want to get political,
I always do.
I think Mr. Rogers was the way Mr. Rogers was 100% because he was a white male. I think if Mr. Rogers grew up, because she was American, right? And then she went to Australia, was what they were alluding to? Or was she British and went to, they never said where she was from. I'm trying to figure out where her accent was from.
You know what?
But she wasn't from
Australia. She ended up there.
Yeah, she ended up there.
Specify.
Anyways, regardless, if she was raised in the Western world in any place, odds are being a woman of color, her life experience would have been a whole lot more challenging than Mr. Rogers' life would have been, from a very general political level. I'm not saying that Mr. Rogers didn't go through his own personal struggles in any sort of way. I'm just saying overall. So I wonder if Mr. Rogers were a woman of color, whether he would be a lot more like Lupita's character.
The thing is about Mr. Rogers too, on that exact same token, is that he was such an ally that, like, I feel like he wouldn't have gotten the voice to say a lot of the things he said back then.
Oh, absolutely.
And the allyship and the things he wanted to try, and the amount of things he did, because he's such an ally, like peak allyship.
Oh, like, for
everybody, for human beings, right? Like the thing is, the problem with the world is that we have guys like Fred Rogers not running for president. You know what I mean? That's who should have ran, but like because he's such an allyship of human beings in general.
but in such a beautiful, non-assertive way. Like it was like, he's really, you know how people annoyingly and problematically / racist say, I don't see color.
Yeah.
I truly believe that Mr. Rogers is a person who didn't see anything.
Yeah.
He like didn't see different abilities. He didn't see race. He did in the most will love you like my neighbor no matter what.
Yeah.
Kind of way, not like I don't see your differences because your differences is what makes you beautiful. He would see your differences for what makes you beautiful, but in the way of like he actually loved everybody.
Yes, he really did.
Right.
He really did. One thing I will say about this movie again, and this happens in almost every movie I watch with my wife, she does this very interesting thing where she cries for teamwork. Can
you hear my voice cracking?
She's crying right now. That's why I just want everyone to know that if you're listening to this, she's crying right now because we're talking about teamwork. I know I'm not in the same room as her, but I know she's crying because any of these talks. So at the end of this movie, because everyone teamed together. Oh, let's add to this. At the end of this movie, where everyone teamed together and it all worked out, and they're in the room, they're singing Taylor Swift. My wife was crying. Here's something that'll make you cry even a little more. By the way, Jenny.
I'm crying because you brought up that scene again. But anyway,
here's something that'll make you cry a little more. So, as we're all aware, the song, if you've seen the movie, by the way, it's on Amazon. I'll put that in the show notes as well. This movie is on Amazon, so you can watch it anytime if you have Amazon. There's a song in this movie that's played throughout. Do you know the song, Jenny?
Yeah.
Shake It Off.
Shake It Off.
Yeah.
Shake It Off. Yeah. Yeah.
That song almost wasn't in this movie.
Really?
What happened was the record label was like, no, you can't have this song in the movie. You're some indie Australian film that's about zombies. I don't know if that's a detail of what they said, but they said you can't have this song in the movie. Yeah. So, and it was such a pivotal part of the script that Lupita called Taylor Swift and said, hey, can we have this song in the movie? It's really pivotal to the movie. And Taylor Swift's like, yeah, sure. And signed over the rights to be in the movie.
Wow.
Yeah, what a flex.
That's really cute.
What a flex, right?
Oh, yeah. That's really cute. Oh, I like that.
I really like that. I liked finding that fact out, and also it just added credence to the fact that Lupita is phenomenal.
Oh, she's incredible. Yeah, she's incredible.
She did not have to do this movie.
No, she didn't, but you could tell she had so much fun doing it.
Can we just start? Can this be the petition to? I might even name the episode this petition to have Lupita do more comedy.
Oh my god! No, I'm sorry, I can't sign that. I just want her to be in more stuff.
Everything
overall, she's an incredible actress.
So good,
incredible. I love everything she's in.
She's a once in a generation actress.
Phenomenal.
I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, she was phenomenal. I thought it was really fun to see her in this because, of course, she's well known for a much more serious role.
Yes.
That I think it was really interesting to see her in a very interesting role because it actually was serious.
Yes.
You know, the overall impression of the movie was comedy, but not from her character.
Right? No, she had to play deadly serious. That's what actually I really liked. She was, of all the characters in the movie,
serious.
Yeah, she was. Yeah. It's like her and Felix's mom. I think that her and Felix's. I love Felix's mom too. That's another character I would love to see more of. I feel like both those characters had to play everything. Like they played it deadpan, like they were in a goddamn serious movie. And then Dave, the brother, he was just all over the map. And I usually don't like that sort of like idiot bro character. Like I just don't really find that an interesting character to watch. He played it so well. Like I think that the scene of him walking, I mentioned this to you earlier, him walking Felix to school and Felix getting bullied by all the kids actually is one of the funnier scenes I've ever seen.
Absolutely.
That killed me. That actually killed me.
Yeah, I have to say personally, like the mark of a good movie, but especially the mark of a really good comedy for me is when you can take each part of a movie and realize that you would be satisfied if they just stayed with that plot.
Yeah.
So for me, like just the beginning part of the movie before zombies were even introduced, just the brother, like the uncle, and Felix, just their relationship and just how blatantly inappropriate and self-absorbed the uncle was enough to carry the whole film. Like I would have probably watched an entire film of that interaction going on and on and on and on because it was just so incredibly comical.
It didn't need zombies at all, right? Like,
no, not at all. And then I felt the same with Teddy McGiggle as well. Like I found that if they just focused an entire movie on like his multiple personalities, would have been incredibly entertaining. And that to me like made them. And then if they just obviously focused just on the zombies and just focused on Miss Caroline and her way of distracting the children and
just Miss Caroline being a teacher, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I would watch that. Just Miss Caroline being a teacher with Max in the class.
Yes.
That the little bully kid. Just watching her have to have a class with that kid picking on Felix. I'd watch that for multiple season TV series. I think that'd be
for
fun.
Sure. And that to me was like, that's why I love movies, is that I love when it's a good movie, is that when you realize that each scene could easily carry an entire movie, and then you put them all together and you're like, oh, how fantastic is this, that there's just multiple amazing storylines that are then all meshed together into one movie. It makes it fantastic.
I think you briefly said it, but I think you did say this though, but even just the zombies, just the American team, because I thought the Americans were really funny in this.
They were.
Just their reaction to everything, and they were so American about it, right? Like, is it fast zombies or slow zombies? Like, oh, it's slow. Oh, okay, it's not a big deal. I'm like, it's still zombies, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think like that's one of my favorite. I'm such an easy sell for that when the American military is made fun of in such an accurate way by other countries.
Yes.
Most movies are made and created out of the United States, where the military is the forefront of everything perfect and angelic, and soldiers are heroes, and the American military is what's saving the world and democracy. And it's so overplayed and personally personally not something I all agree with. So when I see other countries mocking the American military, and I feel like this movie did it in such a delicate way that it almost seemed like it was just part of the overall feel of the movie instead of it being a dig.
Yes.
Made it so classy in the way that it was funny. Like it was just like, ha ha ha, get it? But then not like, we're going to keep on drilling it. Like it was just like kind of an offhand, like, everybody's stupid in this movie, including.
Well, they did a good job of it because they also, at the same time, made the Americans like the heroes in a way that America would be the hero. Do you know what I mean? Yes. They messed up and they kind of saved the day, but they were about to bomb kids.
Because they had guns.
Exactly. Nothing from their tactical standpoint. They messed up. No. They were about to bomb some children.
Yeah, but they were also the reason why it happened in the first place. Like the whole thing leaked from their camp, but then they end up being the heroes because they just had enough guns to shoot them down, right? Which is like so American.
So American. so American. And if anyone that's Americans listening to us, I think you'll be in on this too. I can't see why you wouldn't be. It's very much an American reaction to it. I thought I agree with you. I think they really, really nailed that part of it.
Yeah, definitely. And I thought it was just such an added touch that didn't necessarily have to be there. And like I said, it was so delicate and so classy that it was not very many scenes that the American military were involved in the movie at all. And I think, if you're American and if you support the American military, then you'll actually be quite pleased with the movie because they were the ones who saved the day in the end anyway. So even though they were made fun of, they still saved the day. So
like I said too, it felt like some of the jokes that they made in this, especially towards kids, I thought that it was one of those films I'm like, oh man, because I thought only Australians or only British could really pull this off. With that said, if anyone's listening to this, there's a film called Cooties that came out a couple of years ago with Elijah Wood that has a similar concept, but it's teachers on a playground with zombies, and it's a horror comedy too, and that one's really good. But it doesn't go as hard as this movie, I think. No, and I think if you have kids, if you're around kids, if you know kids, I think
you'll find quite a lot of humor in this.
Yes.
In just the way how so much stuff goes over kids' heads. Like we were saying before, kind of like if your body language and your face expresses to them that everything's okay, they don't actually quite listen to what you're saying.
Mhm.
Like if you use words that they don't understand, or you talk about topics that they don't understand, all of it goes over their head. And I think like so much this movie emphasized that in a very comical way of, so much adult humor was being passed over the children's heads. So much inappropriate adult content was being passed back and forth over the kids' heads. And then in a lot of cases, some of it was said to the kids, and then the kids would just repeat it in the most like plain factual way.
Well, what's interesting too is, right, it's kind of how the movie would have had to been shot.
Absolutely.
The kids
there were
wouldn't have
zombies
known,
around the kids.
right? So there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of how the movie must have been shot that way. Did you know that? Well, this is a fact that I looked up here, that the director, Abe Forsyth, can I confirm his name? Yeah, Abe Forsyth. He dedicated this movie to his own son.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, that's sweet.
Follow-up question. I have a question to this.
What's that?
What movie would you dedicate? It can be horror if you want to. What movie do you think would represent our daughter's personality the best?
Oh, that's a really tough one. I know you have an answer.
I do.
So I think you should go first. And while you're explaining your answer, I'll try to think of one, but you really put me on the spot there because that's hard. That's hard. Can you go ahead?
No Stranger to Horror podcast. We put people on the spot.
Yeah, I could tell.
By we, it's me.
I'm intimidated.
Could I have discussed this with you before? Yeah, of course I could. But anyway, think about that. For me, it's Psycho Gorman, the 2020 horror comedy. I think the little girl in Psycho Gorman is the best representation I've ever seen of my 2-year-old daughter, even though the little girl in this movie is like 8. But I feel like that's who my kid's going to be when she grows up, controlling a very strange alien monster and picking on a sibling. I feel like that's her personality. And I love her so much for it. And I can't wait till my daughter's 8 years old and she finds a crystal that helps her control an alien. I will nurture her as a parent. And I hope my wife, who's here, will do the same. But who knows? I may just be the better parent for that reason.
Public service announcement.
Yeah.
If you are single, if you are in a relationship, or if you are married and you are thinking about having children with somebody, have these conversations before you have a kid, because you just, I think that's a bit concerning to know that my husband will
help my daughter if she finds an alien rock that'll help her control an alien. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
I'm not a non-fun parent. Mr. Rogers would have done the same thing.
Would he? You're slandering Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers believed in helping all sorts of people, aliens as well. So yeah, he would have. By your own admission.
I don't know, because that kind of goes against, because she doesn't help her brother. She's pretty mean to her brother.
She's pretty mean to her brother, that whole movie. Psycho Gorman's a great movie. I'm definitely going to do an episode about it coming up here. So if you haven't seen it, please watch it, because I just want to support Canadian horror. It's so goddamn good. Maybe the best Canadian horror film that's ever come out, which in my opinion is the best Canadian film that's ever came out. So there you go. That and American Mary, which is also great.
That was a great movie. Yeah.
Did you find your answer?
Okay, my head just kept coming back to the same thing, which meant that I really couldn't get past this one thing. And this is so niche, so specific, to the point where I don't even know if anybody on here has seen it, short of you, Joel. Maybe you could put it in the notes.
It'll be in the show notes. Yeah, go on.
That video of it was filmed of a conflict that happened in public. So it's a real video, viral video. I don't even know if it's viral. I feel like that's putting a really big amount of views on it. But where this teenage boy is being confronted by an adult at a shoe store, and his older sister stands up and gets in front of him and the man and takes on the entire confrontation, while the younger brother kind of steps back in fear. And that viral video to me completely sums up not only Ava, but the relationship that she has with her cousin Ollie, of just she's always the one who's going to be the one that kind of just stands up and takes the brunt and is the more of the aggressor in a situation like that. An actual movie, I can't pinpoint at this
that's
point.
Fine. That's great. That's great. That's great.
The only one I can think of is Vanellope von Schweetz from
great choice.
From Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah,
just that kind
choice.
of really full of energy, really full of beans, but kind of
determined though. Very determined.
Yeah. Doesn't back down, isn't easily affected by the words of others or the actions of others. That to me kind of sums her up.
I will say that with this podcast, we have completely nullified anyone ever wanting to babysit our kid. So that's out the window. If anyone's listening to this and they're friends with us, like, hey, guess what? I would babysit. They've heard this episode and like, hell no, what?
Yeah.
She sounds like a monster. She's great.
But she's very funny.
She's very
funny. She's very entertaining. And the thing is, and Joel and I have said this a lot, she has all the personality traits of an adult that I want. I don't want a passive adult that, just follows authority and does exactly what authoritative people tell her to do because they told her to do that. That being said, it makes her quite a challenging 2-year-old to raise because she doesn't listen to authority. She doesn't listen to rules. She does her own thing when she wants, and she challenges you on everything.
But she's not badly behaved with this set. She's not a brat that runs around and destroys things. I mean, she runs around, but she destroys things. But like at home, like
she's not a brat. She just knows what she wants, and she will argue to get what she wants when she wants it. And she doesn't take no as an easy answer. So finding ways to kind of work around that and teach her that she can't always get what she wants when she wants. It's a battle and it's a fight, but I like that. I like that it's a battle and a fight instead of a, yes, of course, whatever you say because you're authoritative. I think I'd rather that, but sometimes I wish she would just
say yeah. Sometimes
just accept that I said no and just move on.
Yeah,
instead of making it all a battle. But no, she's fun. She's fun.
Well, Jenny, I think we should wrap up here. We've talked Ava. We've talked zombies. I have one last zombie question to ask you because I keep saying one more thing throughout this podcast, but I do have a zombie question to ask you because I'm sure, and I asked this to Nito when she was on the show as well. Running or walking zombies? Which one do you prefer in movies?
Oh, running.
Yeah, right?
Running. I think the
walking worked in this one though. I liked walking.
It sure did.
Because it would just it wouldn't work if it was running zombies. 28 days later, zombies would have ran through these kids, ran through everything. It would have been over in like a minute.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, has anybody ever tried to chase a 5-year-old? Like, sure, they're faster than they are at 1 or 2, but they're not fast, right? And I'm in no means a fast athletic runner at all, and I could always catch up with any 5-year-old. So I think for sure this movie would have never worked. But overall, if you're going to tell me which one would I rather see on TV or see on screen, absolutely running. That makes it so much more horrifying.
It's scary.
It's so scary because there's just, how do you win against that?
All of the best zombie movies are running zombie movies, unless they're horror comedies, then they're walking zombie movies. There's I don't think there is a horror comedy with the running zombies.
No, I don't think so.
Can't think of it.
No, not that I can think of.
You could argue Dead Set, I suppose, because Dead Set had running zombies and it had comedy, but very bleak. So
yeah, I don't think so. I think the whole point of having the kind of walking zombies, at least from my own personal perspective on in comedies, like having the walking zombies in comedies, I think you got to get the jokes in, right? Yes. You got to get the jokes. You got to make the point where it's like, if you're out of breath running as fast as you possibly can from running zombies, you're not going to be able. And there's nothing comical about a running zombie, right? I mean,
it's scary. There's nothing comical about things running at you unless it's going to fall over and be clumsy.
Yeah, and the thing with walking zombies, the whole point of it is that they're supposed to kind of come across as dumb.
Yeah,
and so I think that in that way, that's how they kind of make it comical, is like, oh, look, like you can bang a pot and they're going to go the wrong way.
Right.
Or, you know, like if you throw a ball, that kind of thing. Whereas like running zombies aren't just running. I feel like overall their senses are a whole lot more refined, and they're a lot more of a intelligent and sophisticated predator in general. I think it doesn't even just boil down to running. I feel like their senses are all a lot more intense.
There, to quote Gabriel Carter, who was on my show a couple episodes ago, I feel like I quote this a lot. They're more bestial. Like he used that word bestial to describe the monsters he likes, and I've been using it ever since because I love it. Bestial.
Yeah.
Like for every monster movie, I think we kind of sit on the same page with that. I think that a more bestial monster makes it just more interesting, whether it's a werewolf, zombie, vampire. I just want to see them be a monster. But even in this comedy, they were like very monstrous, and it was like really
They were.
They even had monstrous moments of like one of my favorite moments was Josh Gad's after, and I have to have this in here before we wrap up. Josh Gad's monologue on the rooftop was so goddamn funny. That and the store fight that he has with Dave, I think is. That those two scenes are so underratedly funny that I think you need to see them just for those two things. The monologue's so funny, and I think it's like puts credence to what we were saying about like child entertainers. That I bet you that part's true. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but the fight in the store is just two unathletic guys fighting for their lives, which
hilarious.
Is always funny. Even in real life context, as long as no one gets hurt, two people that don't know how to fighting is always comedy to me. Like, I think, like, as long as no one physically gets too hurt, whatever. But like people trying to be strong in situations like that, this is more of a survival thing, but guys trying to be strong in situations like that always looks really dumb. And they nailed it. These guys were like stapling each other and like pulling hair, and it just looked like, it was so funny to watch those two fight.
Hysterical. And I think one of my favorite things that movies do when they're kind of short on time in this, not so much short on time, but like short on time to allocate a lot of in-depth character profiling. I think it's really brilliant when they're able to kind of define a character in just a few scenes. And I think that they did that so well with Teddy McGiggle, was that he wasn't a main character. He was kind of the bad person. Like they had to have someone who was going to continually put them at risk. And he was that person who was continually putting them at risk. Kind of like the evil character. But there was so many other things that had to happen in such a short time frame, because the movie was only an hour and a half. There were so many other things that had to happen. And I think it's so skilled in such a craft to be able to take a side character like Teddy McGiggle, build him up to being this incredibly sweet, funny, charismatic.
But creepy though. Remember that the scene with Lupita? Like,
well, they started very early to kind of like take him down, and I think we all have kind of, short of Mr. Rogers, we kind of all have this.
Sure, LeVar Burton too, by the way. Reading Rainbow. Shout out.
This gut feeling that overall male TV, not even TV, but male kid entertainers are creepy in some way. It's like this natural thing we all kind of have. Not children necessarily. I think that's a really
no, just creepy in general, just like,
but just creepy. Like just there's something creepy about a grown man being a child, like that, kind of like being a baby and using like a baby voice, and it comes across as a lot more normal to see a woman do it, because you see women cooing at their babies, you see women talking in baby voice all the time. But even dads don't do that. Like dads don't talk in baby voice. Dads don't coo at babies. Dads interact with their children on a very different way than mothers do, both with huge amounts of love. It's just a different way in which they do it. So I think the fact that immediately when they made him creepy with Lupita was kind of just playing on the prejudice that viewers already have for a male childhood entertainer.
So what you're saying right now, and I feel like this is a personal and very mean attack towards Blippi, because Blippi, he's done nothing wrong.
Yes.
Blippi is actually, here's another one, by the way. If you have Amazon and you can watch this, you can go watch Blippi too. You don't have to, but I'll spell it out for you. It's Blippi. He spells it out himself too. And I'll put him in the show notes. He doesn't even interact with kids, and he horrifies me to no end. Like, I find him to be terrifying. He's terrifying to me. Like, I think he's one of the scariest.
You know what's so funny about you say that? I can't agree with you.
No way.
There's something, I'll agree with you when it comes to Anthony from the Wiggles.
Anthony from the Wiggles is the man. So take that back.
No. My thing with Blippi is I so view him as like a businessman who just like realized really early that this was just the best way to make money. And he's a clown, right? Like that's the way I view him, is like, he is a clown who's realized that like, if I put on all this stuff, because you can see him, like, I don't know how many episodes you've actually watched, but when he interacts with adults, he's so normal. Like, he's so like, thank you so much. That's really cool. Thanks for showing us. Like, there's a whole episode where he like interacts with a fireman, and the whole thing, he's like, oh, wow, that's really cool. And then like the minute the man turns away, he goes back into this like very silly sing-song character.
Well, for some inside baseball, I did look him up, and he actually, he's like a digital marketing and SEO experience. And that's what like he just translated into. He's a genius.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like that to me makes him a little bit less creepy, is that he's just willing to hone in on this market. Whereas like Anthony from the Wiggles, no disrespect, thinks he's a rock star.
He does.
Right.
Yeah.
He thinks he's a rock star. He thinks he's Elvis, but for children. And to me, like, that's just so much creepier. Just this like sense of like, you think you're all that just because you perform for children. I don't know. Like, it's one thing if you're like, oh, this makes money, I'll do what it takes to make money because whatever, the world's weird. And, you know, he kind of like just figured out this weird loophole in the system to make money. And I feel like I respect that. Whereas like Anthony really believes like he's the second coming. Messiah.
We talked about this though. We talked about like how the energy on the Wiggles show, that other people, when they go on there,
wild.
Like it's just compete. A very weird energy.
Yeah, you can't compete with that.
You can't.
And the fact that they keep that up at all times, and Anthony's been on the Wiggles for years.
He controls the energy, right? He's the director. He controls the energy. So as if anyone thought I was actually yelling at my wife, let's start off on two things. She would never let me. And number two, I don't like Anthony from the Wiggles, so she knew I was joking. I just want to clarify that. But he controls the energy. He directs all the episodes, and we're really deep into the Wiggles apparently.
Yeah, but I think there's just a lot of parallels, right? That's the thing, is that when you see a childhood entertainer on a movie,
Australian
your mind automatically starts to go to others you thought of. Like, my mind, of course, always goes to Pee Wee Herman.
Of course.
And then like, he's kind of the epitome of speaking of childhood entertainers. I feel like right now, and also in the notes, you have to talk about Happy. Like, we don't have to necessarily go on it, but if you're looking for a horror that also kind of dives in on the childhood entertainer being creepy and kind of being a bit nefarious, so to speak. I feel like nefarious is a very kind way of putting it. That's another one. And I think that all kind of plays upon the prejudice that so many people already have towards male entertainers. And that's not to say that that's founded in anything. Like, how many, like, we're talking about Mr. Rogers, we're talking about Raffi, we're talking about Mr. Dresser, Fred Penner. And like, so many of them are really get into it for the right reasons and are really just such kind-hearted, sweet people. And I think it's unfair to kind of lump them all together because. But
I feel like Mr. Rogers, and I feel like LeVar Burton, and I feel like Fred Penner, I feel like that all of those men that did it, and this is what makes them not creepy in my opinion, they didn't do what you just said. They didn't do the overacting kind of like that child voice. They all just kind of seemed like guys you just picked up on the street, like, hey, can you entertain my kid for a little bit? And they're like, yeah, sure. And then they just killed it. Like, LeVar Burton,
they just kind of remind me of those the grandpa, grandpa that
they got
was
grandpa
just a good grandpa. That's it, right? Like that's who they are. And you're right. Like it's the clown energy that
I don't like it.
Like Mr. Rogers, and I don't know if anybody's seen the Mr. Rogers documentary, but
I'll put it in the show.
Yeah, from everybody, like even down to his kids, down to his wife, down to every single person that interacted with him. Everybody said that's who he is. Mm-hmm. Who you see on TV is who he is. And I think that's what's creepy about this clown-like behavior is that why are you doing it and who are you? And I think that's like the kind of, you watch them and you have this mistrust already of like, we know you're not the clown, so who are you? Right? And I think, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I was just going to say, you're making a very good point about the clown, because on that same token, you know who I found creepy that was a woman that was an entertainer? Big comfy couch.
Yes, so true.
So creepy.
So true. Yeah.
So creepy. And and when you said clown, I'm like, that's what it was. That's what it was. That whole clown entertainer.
Yeah. Because if you're putting on a character that's so exaggerated and so clearly not who you are, I think the ability to believe any other story about you is easy. Mm-hmm. This is going to sound so awful, but speaking of clowns, Trump is a good example.
Oh, we're getting political.
But when you put on such a fake persona that people have already been able, it goes for anybody, right? Like when any actor, any politician, mm-hmm. anybody, when like, I mean, if you want to go political, we could even talk about Trudeau and what's happening right now, right? When you put on a fake persona, a fake level of care, concern, I'm going to do what's right, and then you don't do it, or you do the opposite, it's just about trust, right? Like you've mm-hmm. just blown the level of trust that that's who you are. So it's so easy to start to believe rumors or truths or whatever, any story that's made about you, because we've already found holes in the persona in which you've created. And I think that's why it's so easy to believe that these clown-like childhood entertainers, it's easy to believe anything because clearly you're not that. Nobody is that. Nobody is that clown. So to believe that you're an alcoholic who actually hates children is not that hard to believe, versus somebody like Mr. Rogers, when everybody that knew him personally, everybody that ever interacted with him, everybody had the same story of that's who he is. And you hear from everybody that that's the truth. When you find out some other story, it's kind of a little bit harder to believe that that's possible. Right?
I think that's what is going so well right now with comedians and podcasts. We're getting to see both sides of them. We're getting to see their stand-up comedy aspect, which is this beautiful act, but we actually get to see that their personality on a podcast, which is very similar, but not 100% like the same, right? The more the honesty they have on podcasts, which is like all I listen to is comedy podcasts, right? Because I just love the minutia of like how comedy is made, and I just love to hear that. But it's the same thing, right? It's that you don't have to wonder. But with like childhood entertainers that are clownish, you have to wonder, and it just makes you feel uncomfortable, which is great why you brought up Happy, because Happy, I think, nailed it in the most beautiful horror way. Yeah. For the love of God, them canceling that show hurt me.
Oh, yeah, I know.
That hurt me.
It's like such a sore spot. Yeah.
Yeah. Sci-Fi, if you're listening to this, and I'm so heartbroken over you canceling that show and the show Deadly Class in the same year. Yeah. And then I think after that, you canceled Krypton. I don't know why Sci-Fi has something personally against me, but
I know. I just feel personal. Like it's personal, it's mean, it's cruel, and I just hope I never see you in real life, because I'll fight you. I'll fight you, Mr. Sci-Fi.
Mr. Sci-Fi, we are in the niche market that you are breaking up right now.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Our marriage has been rocky since you broke up.
And I bet you didn't expect us to bring you down on a podcast. So here you are, punishment.
Oh yeah, the No Stranger to Horror podcast is coming for you. Oh, I've said like we're gonna wrap up, but before I do, I just want to state something and a big thank you to my wonderful wife. Thank you so much for the idea of the title of this podcast. And I wanted to say it to you. I wanted to say it to you on the show. The No Stranger to Horror idea was Jenny's idea, because I think originally what I was going to go with is like horror is dead or something like that. But everything to do with like No Stranger to Horror, I think you came up with the intro too. You said, yeah, just say like, hi, my name is Jennie Brewster, and I'm no stranger to horror. That was her idea, and I think it was a brilliant idea. And thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. I hope people actually like it and they're not like, oh, she's to blame for this.
Everyone's like, horror is dead? That was the idea before this?
Oh my God, why didn't you go with that?
It's a great idea. Why didn't you? Should have went with that. I just have to change the name of the podcast.
Go back and re-edit everything.
Jenny, I imagine, just because I know you personally, I think I do.
Okay, I hope so.
Well, I hope so too.
Maybe
I imagine that you're not going to want to promote your social media on here. If you do you want more followers? Is that what you do? If not, you can promote something else you just watched or something that inspired you.
You know what I am going to promote, because I feel like it was just a really great show. And a lot of people are already saying it's a really great show. Check out Behind Her Eyes on Netflix, because I thought that was fantastic.
Okay.
Not necessarily say horror, kind of thriller, but creepy. Super creepy. Loved it, because it was one of those shows that you did not see the ending coming until it was happening. And personally, those are my favorite shows or movies, is when you're completely blindsided. Nothing more that I hate than when you're 15 minutes into a movie. Sorry, rom-coms, but when you're 15 minutes into a movie, you know exactly what's going to happen at the end. Drives me crazy. But Behind Her Eyes, no idea until about the last 20 minutes of the show that it was going to go the way that it went. And that's all I had to promote. It's all I've watched lately that I loved, besides Little Monsters. That was a great movie, but
awesome. Well, I'll definitely put that in the show notes, and if I get the time, I'll check it out. And I say if I get the time, because you know where all my time spent.
That's right. Well, make that a priority, because it was great.
I will. I will. Yeah. And on my end, I will just promote what I usually do. You can find me at West Coast Strange, and for both the for both the Facebook page as well as the Instagram. Follow me more on Instagram, I'd say, because the Facebook page, I love you guys, but I feel like I'm aiming more towards Instagram. That has more to do with the algorithm, but that's neither here nor there. Anyways.
He also has fire stories on Instagram. So
thank you.
Thank you so much. You'll get that more than you will on Facebook. So
that's true.
Instagram's better to figure it out. It's much better.
That's true. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. Jenny, thank you so much. I will see you in about 5 seconds when we go to have breakfast and talk about this.
Yeah, and well, I have to drive home for my summer home first.
It's true.
So you might have to wait.
And you're the first guest. I'm going to say this to you. I love you.
Thank you.
I'll see you later. And thank you guys so much for listening. And I hope you got a kick out of this, and be kind and watch more horror. See everybody later.
Bye.